The rain had just stopped falling as I stepped out of the corner store on Elm Street, clutching a paper bag with a six-pack of root beer and a pack of gum. It was one of those late afternoons in Willow Creek, where the sky hangs low and grey, turning the whole town into a watercolor painting that's starting to run at the edges. I remember glancing at my watch, 4:17 p.m., and thinking about the drive home, the way the wipers would slap rhythmically against the windshield. My old Ford Taurus was parked right there, nose in against the curb, just like always. I could see the dent on the rear fender from that fender bender 2 summers back, a badge of everyday wear. But when I turned back from paying the cashier, it was gone. Not stolen, not towed, just gone. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, and scanned the block. Elm Street isn't long. It's the kind of main drag in a small town like ours where everyone knows your license plate. A couple of pickup trucks idled at the light, and Mrs. Hargrove was walking her terrier across the way, but no sign of my car. My heart did a little skip, the kind you feel when you've misplaced your keys, but this was bigger. I walked the length of the sidewalk, peering down side streets, even checking the lot behind the hardware store. Nothing. That's when I saw it. Parked neatly in the lot of the old diner 2 blocks down, the one that's been closed since the highway bypass opened up last year. My Taurus, sitting there under the flickering neon sign that hasn't worked in months, headlights off, engine silent. It looked exactly as I'd left it. Driver's side window cracked an inch for the cat hair that always accumulates. But how? I hadn't driven anywhere else. I'd walked from my house that morning, a habit I'd picked up to stretch my legs after too many desk-bound days at the insurance office. I approached slowly, keys jingling in my pocket, half expecting some prank from the guys at work. But Willow Creek doesn't run on pranks. It's the sort of place where folks wave from porches and lock their doors out of habit, not fear. The air smelled like wet asphalt and distant wood smoke from someone's backyard fire pit. I unlocked the door, slid into the seat, and the familiar creak of the upholstery settled around me like an old friend. The radio was tuned to the same classic rock station. Volume low, no signs of tampering. I turned the key, and it started right up, purring like nothing had happened. Driving home, I replayed it in my head. Must have been absent-minded, I told myself. Locked up after a long shift, hopped in without thinking, and ended up at the diner lot instead of the store. But that didn't sit right. The store was on my direct route. The diner was a detour, past the library and the little park where kids play after school. I shook it off, focusing on the road ahead, the long stretch of Route 12 that winds through cornfields and past the occasional silo, the kind of drive that lulls you into complacency. My name's Alex Harlan. 34, single, and about as ordinary as they come in a town of 5,000 souls. I grew up here, left for college in the city for a few years, then came back when Dad's health turned south. Now he's in the nursing home on the edge of town, and I rattle around in the family house on Maple Lane, a 2-story colonial with creaky floors and a backyard that backs onto woods. It's the American dream shrunk down, mortgage paid off, a job that covers the bills, weekends mowing the lawn or grabbing coffee at the one open diner left. Routine keeps the edges sharp, or so I thought. That evening, as the sun dipped below the tree line, I pulled into the driveway like always. The house lights were off, motion sensor hadn't tripped yet, and the neighbor's spaniel barked lazily from across the fence. I carried the groceries inside, flicking on the kitchen light. The fridge hummed steadily, magnets holding up faded photos. Me and Dad at a high school football game, Mom's recipe for apple pie. I cracked open a root beer, the fizz cutting through the quiet, and settled at the table with the local paper. Nothing much. Obituaries, a story about the county fair coming up, an ad for the motel out by the interstate. But as I sipped, something nagged. The keys. I'd left them on the hook by the door when I went out that morning, a ritual to avoid hunting for them later. Now they were in my pocket, still warm from the ignition. Had I grabbed them on the way out? I couldn't remember. Shrugging, I hung them up and headed to the living room, flipping on the TV for the evening news. The anchor droned about traffic on the bypass, weather holding steady. Normal, reassuring. Sleep came easy that night. The kind of deep, dreamless rest you get in a house that stood for generations. But around 2 a.m., I woke to a sound. Not loud, a soft click like a door latch settling, the wind probably rattling the old windows. I lay there in the dark, sheets tangled around my legs, listening to the house breathe. The clock on the nightstand glowed 2:03. Outside, the woods whispered with crickets. I closed my eyes again, willing myself back to sleep. Morning light filtered through the blinds, painting stripes on the hardwood. I showered, dressed in khakis and a button-down, standard office attire, and grabbed coffee from the percolator. The driveway looked the same, gravel crunching underfoot. My Taurus parked nose out this time, ready for the commute. I backed out carefully, waving to old Mr. Jenkins as he fetched his paper. The drive to work was uneventful, 20 minutes of podcasts and the occasional semi-rumbling past. At the office, a squat brick building off Main Street, I dove into claims reports. Emails pinged, phones rang, the day blurred into its usual rhythm. But during lunch, sitting at my desk with a turkey sandwich from the deli, I pulled out my phone to check the weather. That's when I noticed the photo. I'd snapped it absent-mindedly yesterday afternoon, right after finding the car at the diner lot. A quick shot of the steering wheel, time-stamped 4:22 p.m., to remind myself to get the oil changed. But looking closer, something was off. The odometer reading, it showed 128,473 miles. I checked it last week at the gas station. It was 128,462, 11 miles. In a day where I'd only driven the routine loop, I zoomed in, heart picking up a notch. Maybe I'd misread it before, or the photo was blurry. I deleted it, chalking it up to fatigue, and finished my sandwich. The afternoon dragged, but by quitting time, the unease had faded. I locked up. Walked to the car, parked in the office lot, exactly where I'd left it that morning, and headed home. Pulling into the driveway, the sun was already low, casting long shadows from the oaks. I killed the engine and sat there for a moment, keys in hand. The house waited, windows dark. As I stepped out, a chill ran down my spine, not from the air, but from the way the car door clicked shut behind me. Solid, familiar. But for the first time, it felt like it was listening. The next few days blurred into a haze of routine, the kind that Willow Creek specializes in. Predictable as the chime of the church bells on Sunday morning. I woke each day to the same slant of sunlight through the bedroom curtains, brewed coffee strong enough to cut the fog from my head, and slid into the Taurus for the commute. The office waited with its stack of paperwork and the low hum of fluorescent lights, colleagues nodding hellos over styrofoam cups of whatever passed for morale around here. No one mentioned anything unusual. Why would they? Life in a town like this doesn't pivot on odd car placements or midnight clicks. You file it away, like a receipt in a drawer, and move on. But the nagging wouldn't quit. That evening, after a quick dinner of reheated lasagna from the freezer, I found myself in the garage, poking around the Taurus under the bare bulb that swung like a pendulum. The air smelled of oil and dust, the concrete floor cool against my socks. I kicked off my shoes at the door, a habit from childhood. I popped the hood, peering at the engine as if it held secrets, but everything looked standard. Battery terminals clean, belts snug. No unexplained wear, no foreign fingerprints on the dash. I wiped my hands on a rag and closed it up, the metallic clang echoing a little too sharply in the enclosed space. Sleep was fitful that night. Around 3 a.m., I stirred again, this time to the faint groan of floorboards downstairs. The house settling, I told myself, old wood expanding in the damp autumn air. But I lay there, eyes tracing the ceiling cracks, listening harder. Nothing followed. No footsteps, no creak of a door. Just the distant hoot of an owl from the woods behind the yard. By morning, it felt like a half-remembered dream, the kind that dissolves under the shower's spray. Work dragged on Thursday. I handled a claim for a fender bender out on Route 12, the details mundane, a minivan clipping a mailbox during a rain squall. As I typed up the report, my mind wandered back to the odometer photo I'd deleted. 11 miles. It could have been a glitch. Or maybe I'd driven somewhere subconsciously, a forgotten errand to the hardware store, a loop around the park to clear my head. But I hadn't. My calendar was blank except for the dentist appointment next week, and the gas receipt from Monday showed I'd only topped off 3 gallons. On the way home, I stopped at the Exxon station just off Main, the one with the always flickering pumps and the clerk who knows everyone by name. Pumped regular, watched the numbers climb, $40, 17, and checked the odometer while the tank filled, 128, 484, 22 miles since the photo. That tracked. Office lot to home, the store run, nothing out of the ordinary. Relief washed over me like the cool evening breeze, carrying the scent of fried onions from the nearby burger joint. See? Just paranoia, the kind that creeps in when you're single and the house echoes a bit too much. I pulled into the driveway with the sun still clinging to the horizon, painting the oaks in shades of amber. The mailbox flag was up. Junk mail, probably, or a catalogue from the hardware place. I grabbed it on the way in, flipping through envelopes under the porch light. Utility bill, a flyer for the county fair, and something from the DMV. Routine stuff. Inside, I kicked off my shoes again, the thud muffled by the entry rug, and headed to the kitchen. The fridge light blinked on as I stowed the leftovers, and I poured a glass of water, the faucet's trickle the only sound breaking the quiet. That's when I noticed the keys, not on the hook by the door, where I'd hung them that morning after locking up the house. They were on the kitchen counter, right next to the sink, as if I'd come in earlier and set them down absent-mindedly. But I hadn't. I'd gone straight from car to door, mail in hand, my pulse quickened, a steady thrum in my ears. Had I blacked out for a second? No. That was ridiculous. Maybe I'd stopped inside before work, grabbed a forgotten lunch or something, but the Tupperware in the fridge was untouched, exactly as I'd packed it the night before. I picked them up, the metal cool and familiar, and jangled them lightly. The house key, the car fob, the tiny flashlight Dad had attached years ago. All there. I hung them properly this time, double-checking the hook, and sank into the armchair in the living room. The TV flickered to life with a sitcom rerun, canned laughter filling the space, but it felt hollow. I muted it after a minute, letting the silence settle back in. Outside, the neighbors' lights winked on one by one, families winding down their evenings. Normal. So why did it feel like the walls were leaning in? Friday brought a shift in the weather. Crisp air rolling in from the north, leaves skittering across the lawn like whispers. At the office, I buried myself in emails, avoiding the window that overlooked the parking lot. My Taurus sat there, third space from the entrance, just as I'd left it. But during the mid-morning coffee break, as I stirred sugar into my mug in the break room, Tom from accounting wandered over. "Hey, Alex, you okay? Looked like you saw a ghost yesterday." I forced a chuckle, steam rising from the cup. "Nah, just a long week. That claim from the bypass pile-ups got me tied in knots." He nodded, clapping my shoulder. "Tell me about it. Drive safe out there. Heard there's fog rolling in tonight." Small talk, the glue of small-town work life. But as he walked away, I wondered if he'd seen something, noticed me staring at the car lot too long. Paranoia again, feeding on itself. The fog did come, thick and cloying by quit-in time, turning the headlights into hazy beams as I navigated Route 12 home. The radio crackled with a warning about low visibility, semis pulling over at the rest stops. I gripped the wheel tighter, the vinyl slick under my palms, and kept my eyes on the yellow lines snaking ahead. The woods loomed on either side, shadows merging with the mist, and for a moment I swore I saw taillights flickering in the rear view, red pinpricks that vanished when I blinked. Imagination, I told myself, the isolation of the drive playing tricks. Pulling into the driveway was a relief, the house emerging like a beacon through the soup. I cut the engine, the sudden quiet amplifying the tick of cooling metal. Keys in pocket, I stepped out, the gravel crunching softly, but as I reached the porch, headlights swept across the yard from the road, slow, deliberate, then gone. A neighbor, probably, heading to the late shift at the mill. I shook it off, unlocking the door and stepping inside to the familiar scent of polished wood and faint laundry detergent. That night, over a bowl of cereal at the table, dinner of champions, I pulled out the DMV envelope from the mail pile. Just a renewal notice, nothing urgent, but tucked inside was a photocopy of my registration, stamped from last month. Routine check, the letter said. I scanned it, then froze. The mileage listed 128,450. That was from 2 weeks ago when I'd renewed in person at the county office, but today at the station it was 128,484. 34 miles in 14 days. That matched my logs, commutes, the store run, a trip to visit Dad at the home last Saturday, except I hadn't logged the 11 miles from before, or had I? The doubt coiled tighter, a knot in my gut. I set the paper down, the spoon clinking against the bowl, and stared at the window. Fog pressed against the glass, blurring the world outside. The house felt larger somehow, rooms stretching into shadows I hadn't noticed before. Upstairs, the floorboards groaned once, softly, as if someone had shifted weight. I didn't sleep much after that. Lay in bed with the lamp on low, listening to the night unfold. The drip of the faucet downstairs, the rustle of leaves, the occasional car humming past on the road. Around 1:30, I heard it again. The soft click from the first night. Not wind this time, more like a latch, deliberate. I sat up, heart pounding, and padded to the window. The driveway was empty, the Taurus a hulking shape under the security light. But as I watched, the fog swirled, and for a split second I thought I saw the driver's door ajar, an inch no more, before it seemed to settle shut on its own. By morning, the fog had burned off, leaving a world sharp and ordinary. I dressed, grabbed the keys from the hook, still there, and headed out. The car door was closed tight, locked as I'd left it. I slid in, turned the key, and backed down the drive. Waving to Mr. Jenkins, as usual, the road stretched ahead, empty and inviting. But in the rear view, the house receded, and with it, the feeling that something had watched me leave. Saturday morning dawned with a deceptive clarity, the kind that makes you believe the week's worries were just shadows chasing the night. I lingered over breakfast longer than usual, toasting a couple of slices of bread and spreading peanut butter thick, the crunch of it grounding me as I stared out the kitchen window. The backyard stretched to the woods, leaves turning gold at the edges, and the Taurus sat in the driveway like a sentinel, dew beading on its hood, no sign of last night's illusion, the door firmly shut, the fog a memory. I rinsed the plate, hung the keys precisely on the hook, and stepped out into air crisp with the promise of fall. Mr. Jenkins was already raking his leaves, the scrape of metal on gravel a rhythmic hello. I waved, sliding into the car with a resolve to let it all slide away. The drive to the office felt longer today, Route 12 unfolding in its familiar ribbon of asphalt, flanked by fields now dotted with harvest combines. I tuned the radio to the local station, the DJ's voice crackling through ads for tractor parts and the upcoming fair. By the time I pulled into the lot, the unease from the night before had dulled to a faint hum, like an engine idling too low. I parked in my usual spot, third from the door, and locked up, the beep of the fob echoing off the brick facade. Inside, the office buzzed with weekend prep, folks shuffling papers for Monday's backlog, the coffee pot gurgling its last dregs. I settled at my desk, the computer screen flickering to life with emails that demanded attention, a query on a homeowner's policy, a follow-up on that minivan claim. Routine wrapped around me like a worn jacket, comforting in its predictability. But as I typed, my eyes drifted to the window, drawn to the lot. The Taurus gleamed under the midday sun, unchanged. I shook it off, diving deeper into the work. The click of keys on the keyboard, a steady counterpoint to the doubt whispering at the edges of my mind. Lunch came around noon, and I opted for the deli across the street, the bell above the door jingling as I ordered the usual, turkey on rye, no mayo. The walk back cleared my head a bit, the sidewalk lined with maples shedding their colors like confetti. Back at my desk, unwrapping the sandwich, I noticed Tom from accounting lingering by the copier. He glanced over, that same concerned furrow in his brow from yesterday. "Alex, you sure you're good? You've been spacing out all week." I bit into the sandwich, chewing slowly to buy time. "Yeah, just the usual. Dad's not getting any better, keeps me up some nights." It was a half-truth. The nursing home visits were tough, but they weren't the root of this. Tom nodded sympathetically, mentioning his own aunt in a similar spot, and wandered off. But his words stuck, a mirror to my own unraveling. Was I spacing out, driving places I couldn't recall? The thought coiled tighter, making the bread taste like ash. The afternoon blurred into calls and forms, the clock ticking toward 5 with merciful slowness. When quitting time hit, I gathered my things deliberately, double-checking my desk drawers before heading out. The lot was emptying. Colleagues waving goodbyes as taillights dotted the exit. I approached the Taurus, running a hand along the fender, cool metal, no surprises. Unlocking it, I slid in, the seat conforming to my shape like always. The key turned smoothly, engine humming to life. But as I adjusted the rear view, something caught my eye, a faint smudge on the passenger window. Like a fingerprint pressed from the outside, right at eye level. I leaned over, wiping it with my sleeve, but it smeared rather than cleaned, as if it were on the inside after all. Odd. I must have touched it myself sometime, forgotten in the rush. The drive home was quiet, the sun dipping low and painting the fields in long, stretched shadows. Route 12 felt narrower somehow, the woods encroaching as if they'd grown overnight. I kept the radio off, letting the hum of tires on pavement fill the silence. Pulling into the driveway, the house welcomed me with its shuttered eyes, the porch light automatic but unlit in the fading day. I killed the engine, pocketed the keys and stepped out, the gravel shifting under my shoes. The mailbox was empty, no new mail since yesterday, and I headed inside, the door clicking shut behind me with a finality that echoed. Dinner was simple. Canned soup heated on the stove, the steam rising in lazy curls as I stirred. The kitchen felt warmer tonight, the overhead light casting a soft glow on the counters, cluttered with mail and a half-read newspaper. I ate at the table, spoon scraping the bowl, mind replaying the day's fragments, the smudge, Tom's question, the odometer that always seemed one step ahead. Afterward, I washed up, hanging the keys back on the hook with a glance to confirm they stayed put. The house settled around me as I moved to the living room, flipping on a lamp and sinking into the armchair with a book I'd been meaning to finish, a mystery set in some coastal town, irony not lost on me. But reading didn't hold. The words blurred after a few pages, my eyes drawn instead to the window overlooking the driveway. Dusk had deepened to twilight, the Taurus a darker shape against the oaks. I stood, pacing to the glass, peering out. Nothing stirred, no headlights, no rustle in the bushes, just the quiet vigil of suburbia, where neighbors' homes glowed with TV flicker and the distant bark of a dog. I turned away, but the unease lingered, a prickle at the back of my neck like eyes on my skin. Upstairs, the bedroom waited with its familiar disarray, bed made but rumpled from restless nights. Nightstand cluttered with change and a dog-eared alarm clock. I changed into sweats, brushed my teeth to the hum of the bathroom fan, and climbed under the covers early, around 9. The lamp clicked off, plunging the room into that thick country dark where shapes lose their edges. Sleep tugged at me, but it was shallow, dreams fragmenting into half-formed drives, the wheel under my hands, roads twisting into loops I couldn't escape, the odometer spinning forward without my foot on the gas. Sometime later, maybe midnight, the clock's glow too dim to read without my glasses, I woke to it again. The click, softer this time from downstairs, like the front door testing its latch. My heart stuttered, breath caught in my throat. I lay still, ears straining over the hush of the house. Wind, a branch tapping, but the night was calm outside, stars pricking the sky through a gap in the blinds. Minutes stretched, the silence amplifying every creak of the foundation, every sigh of the pipes. Unable to settle, I slipped out of bed, feet cold on the hardwood, and crept to the landing. The stairs descended into shadow, the living room a void below. I flicked the hall light, its bulb buzzing faintly, and descended step by step, each one groaning under my weight. The front door came into view, chains still latched, deadbolt secure, no sign of entry. But on the entry table where I'd left my wallet that morning sat the keys. Not on the hook in the kitchen, here inches from the door, as if someone had come in, set them down, and left. My mouth went dry. Impulse a drum in my temples. I snatched them up, the metal biting into my palm, and checked the lock again. Intact. The chain rattled as I tugged it, reassuring myself. Backtracking to the kitchen, I replaced them on the hook, but the doubt had rooted deep now, twisting like vines. Had I moved them myself, sleepwalking through the night, unlocking the door, stepping out to... What? The thought chilled me more than the floorboards underfoot. I didn't return to bed. Instead, I brewed a pot of decaf, the machine's gurgle a companion in the quiet hours. Seated at the table, mug steaming, I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the calendar app, hunting for gaps. Work shifts, dad's visits, grocery runs, all accounted for, but the mileage nagged. Those unlogged miles like ghosts in the machine. I opened the Notes app, jotting down the odometer readings I remembered. 128, 462 last week. 128, 473 after the diner incident. 128, 484 at the station. Patterns emerged, subtle but insistent, jumps that didn't align with my drives, always in increments that whispered of short, secret trips. By dawn, the first light seeped through the windows, turning the counters grey. Exhaustion weighed on me, but clarity sharpened the edges of my fear. This wasn't fatigue or forgetfulness. It was something deliberate, watching, mimicking my life just enough to blur the lines. I glanced at the hook. The keys hung innocently, and then to the window. The Taurus waited, patient as ever. But today, as I dressed for the weekend errands, I couldn't shake the sense that it was waiting for me to make the next move. Or perhaps that it already had. Sunday morning arrived with a hush that blanked the town, the kind of stillness where Willow Creek feels like it's holding its breath. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, running a hand through my hair, the stubble shadowing my jaw, a reminder of the sleepless night. The face staring back was mine. Tired eyes, faint lines from years of squinting at spreadsheets, but it carried a stranger's wariness now, like I'd borrowed someone else's doubt. Downstairs, the coffee maker gurgled its final protest, the aroma mingling with the faint mustiness of the old house. I poured a mug, black and steaming, and sipped it slowly at the kitchen table, the warmth seeping into my palms as I mapped out the day, a quick stop at the hardware store for light bulbs, maybe a drive out to the nursing home to see Dad, anything to fill the hours and push back the shadows. The keys caught my eye on the hook, glinting under the overhead light. I approached them cautiously, as if they might vanish or multiply, and unhooked the ring. The weight felt right, the fobs plastic worn smooth from pocket time. Outside, the driveway baked under a pale sun. The Taurus parked at an angle. I didn't remember leaving it, nose slightly toward the garage, as if it had nudged itself closer during the night. I blinked, attributing it to the way the gravel settled, and unlocked the door. The interior smelled of vinyl and faint air freshener, the kind of pine that never quite masks the years. I turned the ignition, and the engine caught with its usual rumble, dashboard lights flickering to life. Odometer, 128, 485. 1 mile since the station yesterday. That didn't track. I hadn't driven since pulling in after work. My stomach twisted, a cold knot forming as I stared at the numbers. Had I taken it out in the fog? A midnight loop through the neighborhood, autopilot guiding me home without memory. I backed out slowly, the rear view showing the house shrinking, its windows blank and unblinking. Mr. Jenkins paused his raking to wave, his face creased in a neighborly smile, but I only nodded, gripped tight on the wheel. The hardware store was a 10-minute drive down Main, past the library with its faded banners and the park where empty swings swayed in the breeze. I kept the radio low, some talk show droning about crop yields, but my mind raced ahead, piecing together fragments, the diner lot, the smudge on the window, keys migrating like they had minds of their own. It wasn't theft or sabotage. No one in Willow Creek would bother with a beat-up Taurus. This was subtler, unraveling from within, as if my routines had started scripting themselves. The store's parking lot was half empty, locals milling about with carts of nails and paint cans. I grabbed a basket, wandering the aisles under the hum of fluorescent tubes, the scent of sawdust thick in the air, light bulbs, 40-watt, the kind for the porch. As I reached for the pack, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Tom at work, checking in about the minivan claim. All set? Simple, innocuous. I replied quickly, thumbs flying, then pocketed it and headed to checkout. The cashier, a woman with a name tag reading Bev, rang me up with small talk about the fare. "You going this year, hun?" I murmured a yes, paid with cash, exact change, a habit, and stepped out into the sunlight. That's when I saw it. Across the street in the lot of the closed-down video rental shop, my Taurus sat. Not in the hardware store lot where I'd parked it moments ago, engine ticking cool, but there, 2 blocks away, aligned perfectly between faded parking lines. My breath caught, the bag of bulbs slipping from my fingers to the pavement. I hadn't driven it, hadn't even turned away long enough. Heart hammering, I crossed the road in a daze, cars honking faintly as I dodged the curb. The car looked untouched, door locked, no keys in the ignition because they were still in my hand, clutched like a lifeline. I fumbled with the fob, unlocking it, and peered inside. The seat was adjusted just so, the way I liked it, back a notch for my legs. On the dash, a receipt from the deli yesterday, turkey on rye, timestamp 12:47 p.m. mine. But how had it gotten here? I slid into the driver's seat, hands trembling as I gripped the wheel. The engine started without hesitation, the odometer now reading 128, 487. 2 miles, the distance from the hardware lot to here, plus the phantom one from before. It was as if the car had driven itself, retracing steps I never took, leaving breadcrumbs of my life scattered in its wake. Driving back to the house felt like navigating a dream, the streets of Willow Creek blurring at the edges. I passed the park, the library, the Exxon with its pumps standing sentinel, but everything carried a doubled quality now, like echoes of places I'd been without going. Pulling into the driveway, I killed the engine and sat there, keys digging into my palm. The house loomed, its front door slightly ajar, though I'd locked it that morning. Wind, maybe, or something testing the boundaries. Inside, the air felt thicker, the kitchen clock ticking louder than usual. I set the bulbs on the counter, the plastic crinkling, and sank into a chair. My phone buzzed again, not Tom this time, but an alert from the banking app. A charge at the corner store on Elm Street, 4:17 p.m. yesterday. Root beer and gum, $3.82. I'd paid cash. No card. But the transaction was there. Digital proof of a purchase I remembered making, yet now layered with impossibility. The realization settled over me like dusk. It wasn't the car moving. It was me, or something wearing my shape, slipping into my days, borrowing my habits to weave a parallel life. The clicks at night, the keys in wrong places, the mileage that tallied trips I couldn't claim. Not a haunting, not madness, but a mimicry so precise it blurred where I ended and it began. I glanced at the window, the Taurus waiting patiently, its hood reflecting the fading light. Had I driven to the store yesterday? Or had it in my skin while I walked the routine path? Evening crept in, the woods whispering secrets I couldn't decipher. I didn't eat, didn't turn on the lights, just sat in the gathering dark, listening to the house murmur its own story. Outside, headlights swept the road once, slow and lingering, before fading into the night. The keys stayed on the hook, unmoving, but in the quiet, I felt the pull, the subtle urge to grab them, slide into the seat and let the road decide. Tomorrow I'd visit Dad, tell him about the fair, keep the ordinary alive. Yet deep down I knew the Taurus would be waiting, parked just a little off, ready to carry on without me. Or with, the line was too thin to tell.